Hi everybody, and welcome to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. In this video, we've got a great post from Am I the A-hole with an update, one from Malicious Compliance, and also one from Petty Revenge. So if you want to go ahead and get started with the stories, just use the timestamps below the video. Now, let's get started with the first story. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole, and it's by user @TheReddit. Am I the a-hole for kicking my sister out of my family gathering after a comment about my adopted son? Some feel I, 32 male, should have handled the situation, but I don't see how I'm wrong. Me and my sister, 37 female, are not as close as we used to be because of some messed up stuff that happened years ago. I had my son, Jesse, 9, pretty young. Months after that, to my surprise, my ex was pregnant again. Only I knew it wasn't mine because having an infant to take care of and provide left me with zero interest in sex. And we found out it was my sister's fiancé, ex now, that she was seeing behind our backs. It hurt. Worst pain ever, but for my son's sake, I tried to get past it. I come from a family of half-siblings too, so I wanted my son to be close to his half-brother, Keith. Surprise! Not only were they, my ex and my sister's ex, horrible lying cheaters, but also terrible parents. Both got hooked on drugs and escalated from there. He got locked up when Keith was 3. This particular issue with my sister happened a couple of years ago. My ex got sick. She was scared of ending up in foster care like she did, and I didn't want that for him either. I legally adopted him before she passed when he was 6. Not everyone in my family was on board at first, but he's the kind of kid that is hard not to love, so they warmed up to him. My sister never did. She hated that I brought the son of her ex-fiancé into my family, and I understood why it was painful, but Keith's and Jesse's best interests were my main priority. That's how we drifted apart. Last weekend was my birthday, and we had a small barbecue at my place. My parents have tried hard to mend things between us, so they convinced me to let her come too so we can chat. I thought that meant she was cool with Keith because obviously the three of us are a package deal. I asked my parents how would she feel about Keith. They said not to worry about it. Again, I took it as she came around. Only she wasn't told he would also be present. But how could he not be? He lives here. My sister got there and she was mad when she saw him. She very specifically said, "I thought this was family only, what's he doing here?" Loud enough where he could have easily heard, but thankfully he was playing with his brother. My sister was pissed because my parents told her Keith wouldn't be around. And I got pissed when she told me she didn't want him here, expecting me to do something about it. So I just told her to leave, and she's not welcomed here then. There was some back and forth between her and my parents. I didn't want that kind of talk around my sons, so still made her leave. My mom seems to think I was a huge a-hole for kicking her out of my party instead of trying to work things out. Like, they take Keith somewhere out of sight while me and her talk. But to me, what's the point of us working it out if that's how she still feels towards my son? Well, this is still causing some conflict since I escalated the feud by making her leave instead of actually talking to her. Am I the a-hole? No, OP, you're not the a-hole. The only a-holes here were your parents who ambushed both of you. I totally understand your sister not having an affinity with Keith. That's fine. Of course, Keith reminds her of her ex-fiancé, that he cheated on her and it's hurtful and, all of that emotional stuff going on there. You have different priorities. You were able to get past your ex cheating on you, even though that doesn't mean you were her friend or anything, because of your son, and you still wanted your son to have a relationship with his brother, so you took in Keith, which I have to say is commendable. I believe it takes a big heart and conviction to do what you did, to put yourself aside for the benefit of your son and taking care of Keith, who you now love. Now, your parents, in pure sitcom style, decided to meddle and stick their hands in your business, and they actually made it worse. Now they're saying you're the a-hole because you've just been consequent? Nah, screw that. The only a-holes here are your parents. So again, you're not the a-hole. Now, what do you guys think? What is your judgment on this situation? Let me know what you think in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see their judgment. First, Pomegranate955 says, "Not the a-hole. Regardless of what happened in the past between consenting adults, Keith is a child and is absolutely innocent. Bless you, OP, for having such a huge heart and opening up your home to another son. You rock." Leslie Laughs says, "Let me get this straight. Essentially, the same exact thing happens to both you and your sister. You were both cheated on, and you do a remarkably decent thing and adopt the child that resulted from it, yet she can't even be in the same room as said child? Why does she think her pain from said incident is so much more traumatic than yours? Does she even realize, comparatively speaking, what a petty little human she must be? Dude, you are so not the a-hole, and kudos for being a generally good human. We need more people like you in the world today." And OP responds, "I don't know. People handle this stuff different, I guess. For me, I had my son to think about, and I didn't want him growing up without knowing his other brother. Therapy for sure was a huge help. Wish she'd believe in that kind of thing, or at least give it a try." Berlin Angel says, "Not the a-hole. Why did your parents tell her Keith would not be around? This makes no sense. And then saying you are an a-hole? Not fair. You did the right thing in that situation. But try to talk to your sister and tell her he is your kid. And if she doesn't want to see him, it'll be quite possible you see each other never again." And OP responds, "She was under the assumption that he would be getting watched by someone else so that we could talk, and I think my parents expected us both to go along with it. Poorly executed plan. I don't know how they thought it was going to go. We already had that talk after I adopted him, so I've said what I needed to say if she couldn't accept it." Well, the community clearly agrees that OP is not the a-hole, and that what he did for Keith was actually an upstanding thing, which I agree with, I have to say. Unfortunately, OP's sister is not over the pain. Apparently she hasn't worked through it, and maybe she never will, which is absolutely fine. It's her choice. And OP is pretty much at peace that if his sister can't get over it, then they just won't see each other anymore, and that is that. He's focusing on his kids. Now, OP has given us an update, so let's continue with that to find out what happened next. Okay, I actually wasn't going to add anything, but figured since the conflict has been somewhat resolved, why not? This issue was mostly on my parents, and I decided to contact my sister to discuss what to do with them. It was a very tense conversation. Really tense. She was still very mad at me. Lots of resentment, obviously. I was angry at her for her reaction at my party, but at least we managed to remain civil and kept the topic solely on our parents to make sure they don't try to pull something like this again. We agreed neither of us will be in each other's lives. Her issues with Keith and me not wanting to exclude him as he's a big part of my life, and agreed that we both needed to speak to them together to get that point across. When we met up with them, we told them they're gonna have to accept that this is how it's going to be. Do holidays and celebrations like we've done them before, separate. One of us not attending or showing up after the other has left. And they are not allowed to push us into talking, ambush us the way they did again, or that'll result in losing us both permanently. In the end, they seemed to have got it. At least they apologized, and that was that. My sister and I went our separate ways. Does it absolutely suck? Yes, but that's where life's taken us. At least now neither of us have to worry too much if we're going to get tricked into a meeting again. At least I hope not. Oh, and one thing I wanted to address. My son. I did see a few comments concerned if Keith heard what she said or not, or maybe he pretended not to. I kinda hoped he just didn't, since I didn't see a reaction, but thanks for pointing that out. In case he did, I didn't want him internalizing that. Unfortunately, yes, he did hear. We had a whole conversation several nights ago alone. He didn't want to admit at first he heard, but you can tell from kids. This heavy stuff never gets easy explaining to a kid. The best I could say was she was just angry, and angry people sometimes say mean things for no reason. But no matter what, he's family. He knows he's my boy and I love him and his brother does too. I'm glad he knows that. Glad people brought it up to my attention. Big smiley face. Glad to have gotten Reddit's support and wisdom. I appreciate it so much. Not a perfect ending where everyone got along, but at least now boundaries have been drawn and fewer chances of this happening again. Well, OP, at least the matter can now be put to rest. Again, of course it sucks to lose that relationship with your sister, but you seem to be at peace with it and you're actually focusing on the kids. And again, you are awesome for what you did, adopting Keith. That's really cool of you. So on that note, I'm just gonna say all the best to you, OP, and your boys. Take care. And now we're gonna move on to the next post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user Theory of Relativity. My appointment was cancelled for being 5 minutes late. I guess I have to reschedule. This happened about 4 years ago when I got a summer job at my university. The job was working for professors that I had worked with before, and they asked me last minute to teach a summer workshop to 9th and 10th graders. So with less than 2 weeks before the camp starts, I have a bunch of paperwork to do first, including clearances that say I can work with kids. One of these is an official FBI check for which they need my fingerprints. Well, I needed to do the physical fingerprinting right away in order to get the result in time. Luckily, I was able to book a fingerprinting appointment for that Friday, booked 24 hours in advance as required, which would be just barely enough time to get the result. That Friday, I catch the subway to campus and it's atrociously slow. I'll admit, I should have planned for this. The subway here is always late. Anyway, I end up slightly late getting to campus, so I literally run to the police station and enter the front room at exactly 5 minutes after my appointment time. I know this because as I stepped through the door, I felt my phone buzz with what turned out to be a "Your appointment has been cancelled" email. I speak to the security or cop behind bulletproof glass inside, and I learned the appointment was cancelled after he checks my confirmation number. Apparently, they are automatically cancelled if you're not checked in within 5 minutes. Obviously, this is outrageous, but I'm usually a patient guy. I ask if I can book a new appointment. That's no good since it would have to be Monday or later. So I grab a coffee from across the street and return to sit inside the police station to try and solve this with some Googling while I slip into a more and more frantic state of frustration. I can't find anywhere in the city that can fingerprint me before Monday. But here's what really pushed me over the edge. While I'm sitting there, at this point 30 minutes past my appointment time, someone else comes in for fingerprints. She shows up 5 minutes early. They take her in immediately and she's out before her appointment was even scheduled to begin. The entire thing took her about 2 minutes. I point out to the cop behind the glass, as politely as I can, that clearly someone could see me right now because her appointment is already over. Why can't I have the current slot? But the cop insists that since my appointment was cancelled, my registration info was no longer in the system, and I can't be seen today. That's when the idea comes to me and I confirm with him that showing up early is not a problem because they would have my appointment and registration info in the system. You see where I'm going with this. So I quietly sit back down and take out my phone. About 10 minutes later, I calmly approach him again and say, "Hello, I have a new appointment to be fingerprinted. I'm about 72 hours early." I have never seen such an exasperated sigh in my life. But he checked my new confirmation number and everything was in order. Within 10 minutes, I was walking back out after getting fingerprinted. Oh, OP, what fantastic malicious compliance. I loved your story and reading it was so much fun. I don't know why it is, but I just love it when this type of thing happens, when somebody just finds a very smart loophole and plays the system against itself. I feel like this post deserves a smiley face. Anyways, let's move on to the final post of the video. This post is from the subreddit Petty Revenge and it's by user Yelling Snowloaf. Don't want to replace the toilet paper when it's empty? Okay. My spouse Jack is a wonderful person and I love him dearly, but he can be a little one-track minded sometimes. We moved a few months ago, and due to the bathroom setup, the extra toilet paper rolls have to be a few feet away from the toilet. In our previous house, the toilet was right next to the cabinet, so it was easy to replace the roll. Since moving, Jack often leaves an empty toilet paper roll on the holder and places the new roll on a surface by the toilet. Sometimes he'll use the last of a roll and not even get a new one out for the next user. Super inconsiderate, but no one is without faults, right? I brought it up in casual conversation a few times, but he keeps doing it. Okay, so I told Jack the issue and allowed a few times of reminding so that he can form the habit, but he isn't even trying. Time to get petty. Jack really prefers that the toilet paper to be up and over rather than under and behind. Of course, now when I replace it after he should have, I purposely do it the way I know he doesn't like. Jack always fixes it the next time he uses it. One day he said, "You know, the toilet paper is supposed to go up and over." I told him that I did know he really prefers it that way, and if he replaced it himself, then he wouldn't have to worry about it. The look of, "Wait a minute, hey," was wonderful. I will keep doing this until I no longer need to. Beautiful, harmless pettiness, OP. This was fantastic. 100% approve. On a side note, I totally agree with him. Up and over all the time. And it's that time that we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I certainly did reading them to you. So if you did, then go ahead and give the video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and become a member of our Discord community that just keeps growing, and it is fantastic. And like I said in the beginning of the video, all of the relevant links are in the video description below, so be sure to check them out. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. It really does mean a lot to me that you guys enjoy this content, so thank you once again. And having said all that, I will see you guys in the next video.